you so much, Kannon Kares, for joining us here on AwareNow to share this space and to share your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's begin this way. Can you tell us first a bit about yourself and then your role as a loan officer offering VA mortgages for veterans?
Yeah, I will, absolutely. So I'm a married man, happily married, I should say. And between me and my wife, we have 7 children, 4 grandchildren, and I'm a avid outdoorsman and been in the mortgage business for a very long time and really enjoy it.
All right, all right. So you're married, you are into banking, but there's more to this picture. You love fishing. So,
Yeah, I really do.
please tell us about the program that you've been involved with to support veterans through fishing.
Yeah, so 5 years ago, I was approached by an organization called Vets with Nets. And what it is it's a organization that we started veterans and active duty military walleye fishing tournament on Lake Erie during the summer. And the first year we had, I think, 70 veterans and approximately 30 captains come. So what happens is the veterans and active duty military can come meet us for a get together the night before the tournament, and we provide them with a meal, and it's kind of like a meet and greet, and we get them all registered. And then the next day is the tournament. So this is the 5th year this past summer that I did it. And now we're up to 150 captains. So the captain brings the boat, all the fishing gear, provides the bait, the fuel, and then the veterans and active duty just have to come and we take them out fishing and have like a fishing tournament for them, free of charge to them, obviously. And we had, I think, 300 veterans last year. Yeah.
That's incredible. 300 veterans all out there fishing, and yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think the furthest any veteran came to participate was 2 summers ago, and she was a Navy veteran of like 35 years, and she drove herself all the way from South Texas to Monroe, Michigan, and she was like 80 years old, and it was amazing. She had the time of their life, and all of the veterans that come and participate in active duty military, they just get catered to, and we have a giant tent set up there at the Detroit Beach Club, so we're right on the water. They have military flyovers during the event, and take pictures, and all the captains, we all line up and we have flags in our boats. The event, I think last year, I think we caught 2,500 walleye during the event. And so then what we do is we have people back on shore, and they fillet them right then and there. And then at the Detroit Beach Club, the Vets for Nets bought this giant fish cooker. So we cook all the fish. They have coleslaw, cornbread, beans. And so then we feed everybody. And so they get to eat their catch right away too, which is just amazing.
Wow, it sounds like, and the fact that people are coming such distances to be part of this, I can't imagine what that's like for them, and the stories they get to share while fishing. I mean, certainly fishing's great for that, sharing stories and creating.
It is.
Stories. Yeah.
It is. And I met what I will now consider one of my best friends. I've known him now for 4 years on my boat. So the night before the tournament, we were doing all the registration, and this guy was sitting next to me, and he was doing something, selling something or giving something away to the veterans. And then later on, he asked me, he goes, do you have room on your boat for me tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, sure. Don't you have a boat, captain, to go with? And he's like, no, I didn't get a chance to register. So I was like, yeah, we can do it. And I said, just meet me at the boat launch at 6 o'clock the next morning. And I get there, and I'd forgotten all about it because I was, running around trying to get everything ready. I get to the boat launch, and then this guy's standing on the dock, And he goes, "Hey, Kannon, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Good, good." And he goes, "Hey, I'm Brandon, and I'm going to be fishing with you today." I'm like, "Oh yeah, hey, jump in." So he gets in the boat, and we drive 28 miles across Lake Erie to get to my spot where I want these guys to win the tournament at. And we're fishing away for a couple hours, and I'm talking to the other veterans. And then finally I get to Brandon, and I'm like, "Brandon, where are you from? Where do you live?" He goes, "Well, I live in Charlotte, Michigan." I'm like, "Really?" I go, "I live in Eaton Rapids, Michigan." So we're like maybe 10 miles apart. And I'm like, "That's crazy." I said, "Where in Charlotte do you live?" And he says, "Duck Lake," which is like the only lake around here. And I'm like, "I'm at Duck Lake like 3, 4, 5 days a week." And he's like, "No way." So ever since then, me and him have become best buds. And now he's like up in the hierarchy of the vets with nets. He's a veteran, Navy veteran. And now he's up in the hierarchy. I don't remember his title exactly, but just crazy coincidence.
That's wild how acts of service can bring us together with complete strangers that are actually next door neighbors, literally.
Isn't it? It is.
It's wild.
World.
So back to banking, I have to ask, what is it that inspired you to focus on assisting veterans with their home financing through VA loans?
It's a great question. So a little backstory. I was never in the military, but my grandfather was a World War II veteran. My wife's grandfather was a World War II veteran, and he was in the Air Force. And he actually was a airplane mechanic and worked on the Enola Gay, back many, many years ago. And my stepfather was in the Marines. Her father was in the Air Force. My sister was in the Army, the Michigan Army Guards, and met her husband in the Army. My second oldest son was in the Army, and my youngest son out of 3 is currently serving in the United States Army. He's a captain in the United States Army right now. So, and we have nieces and nephews that are in the Army, and are not Army military. They're actually Navy is what they're in, the niece and nephew. So it's in the blood, I guess. I went to college and I was a college wrestler, but I always wanted to be in the Marines. But mom always is like, "No, you're going to college and you're going to wrestle as a good wrestler." And so that's what I ended up doing. But they hold a special place in my heart. So because of that, it's kind of morphed into focusing on VA lending for veterans to give them the opportunity to purchase a home. And it's, VA does not require a down payment from the veterans. So they can get into a home with very little money out of their pocket. Huntington Bank will actually discount the closing costs to where sometimes veterans, active duty, can get into a home with very little, if anything, out of their pocket. So it's important to me to do that, to give back. Even though I didn't serve, I feel like I'm kind of serving them that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you share a personal or professional experience that sort of highlights the impact of VA mortgages on veterans and their families?
Yeah. Recently, it was last spring, I had a referral from the bank for a husband and wife that wanted to get pre-approved to buy a house. They had actually been renting the same house for 40 years, and they never thought that they could become homeowners because they just didn't have a lot of retirement income, and their Social Security wasn't a lot, so they didn't have a savings. So they really didn't think they could get into a home. But they're talking to one of the bankers at the branch and said, "Hey, VA loans do not require down payment. Kannon specializes in VA loans, so let me connect you with Kannon." And I spoke to them and got them into a home for basically almost nothing out of their pocket. And they were elated, and they're homeowners now, and I talk to them frequently. We became friends, and they've actually sent me a couple of their customers as well. But that's the type of thing you can do, is if we can get the word out to these veterans that they don't need the down payment. Huntington will discount the closing costs where it doesn't take a bunch of money out of their pocket to get into a house. That's what we need to do.
Absolutely. Just to know that that possibility exists. And my goodness, after 40 years of
Can you imagine?
bonding, that's wild. That's so wild.
I hear stories like that all the time, though. It's because they just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. So I think hopefully this can help us get the word out. And, being involved in Vets with Nets and that type of thing, I try to get the word out the best we can. And Huntington does a great job with it, too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what challenges do veterans commonly face when it comes to securing mortgages? How do the VA loan programs address these things?
Yeah. So there's not really any added underwriting overlays for a veteran. VA underwriting is pretty cut and dry. They actually have loose guidelines, a little bit looser than conventional financing for credit scores and whatnot. So the biggest challenge is just getting the word out to the veterans. They still have to qualify with their debt to income ratios, and they have to have paid their bills on time. But credit scores like Huntington can go down to 580. Now that sounds really low, but just because somebody has a low credit score doesn't mean they have bad credit, right? They might have lack of credit, whereas conventional, you have to have a 620 credit score. So the credit requirements are actually a little more lax for veterans. And an interesting statistic is that the veterans and active duty military have less delinquency on mortgages than any other type of mortgage. And, you would think, the layman person would think, well, if they're not putting anything down, they don't have any skin in the game, they're going to end up with delinquency. But the fact that most military are regimented and they're disciplined, they tend to pay more. So that's why VA loans continue to only give 100% financing and not require a down payment. They can put it down if they want, but they don't have to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And again, it's just like you said, you don't know what you don't know until we now know. And so it's helping other people know that this is the case. Are there changes or improvements that you hope to see in the landscape of veteran housing and support?
Yeah, I think, Allie, the big thing is that we have to keep getting the word out. And there's a lot of companies that I see on TV, advertising for veteran loans, and that's not a bad thing. Competition in business is a good thing. The only difference would be is that, at Huntington, we discount the closing costs. Other companies, I don't believe they do, but it's just word of mouth and advertising, getting the word out to these people that they can become homeowners and that, we appreciate their service to our country. And because of that, they don't require a down payment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and so it is just that raising awareness, helping them know that there are options.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
let's go a different direction with this. What advice do you have for individuals who are aspiring to become loan officers like yourself, especially those who are interested in supporting causes such as veteran housing?
I would say do the research. If you want to become a loan officer, is research the companies, narrow it down to 2 or 3 different companies that you're interested in. Make sure that they're financially stable companies, because what you don't want to do is, work for a company and then they go out of business, which banks, it's a tough business. People think, well, banks got all the money. Well, they also have a lot of risk out there because they're lending the money. And when you lend the money, you expect to have it paid back. When you don't get it paid back, it puts a crimp on the financial stability of the business. So I would say just do the research of what lending institution, that they're stable, that they have a good reputation, they have a good training program, and then they support the mortgage loan officer. Because you can have all the best programs in the world for lending, But if your back end isn't as good as your front end, which means like the support, like we have what we call HLAs, home lending assistants, they're processors, they help us get the loan through, and they're as critical and vital as the loan officer themselves. So make sure the back end's good, make sure the company's financially stable, and a good reputable business, good training. Obviously benefits and whatnot are important as well, but just do the research and jump in and go for it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing this time. Thank you for helping all of us become a bit more aware now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.